This is a Fox News alert. Donald Trump has been railing against the Clinton Foundation, calling it corrupt. And that's not all he's talking about at a campaign rally in Ohio. Let's listen live.
We are going to have a new immigration screening test to keep people out of our country who don't support our tolerant values. We are going to have extreme vetting. Remember, extreme vetting. We want people in our country, but we want people that have the ability to love us and respect us. We are also going to reject the bigotry of Hillary Clinton, who sees people of color only as votes and not as human beings worthy of a better future. So true. That is so true. The Democratic Party has run nearly every inner city for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, and even more than 100 years. They have produced only poverty, failing schools, and broken homes. In the last 8 years, the African American labor force participation has declined another 3 percentage points, and it's dropped another 6 percentage points for teenagers, and that's already from the most dismal numbers in history. Nearly 4 in 10 African American children live in poverty. African American home ownership has declined nearly 10 percentage points from record levels. This is just in the last short while. Also, since 2009, another 2 million Latinos have fallen into poverty. Incomes for Latino workers fell by almost another $1,000 a year, again, by terrible standards. Meanwhile, homicides are up nearly 50% in Washington, D.C., and more than 60% in Baltimore, and up all over the place, no matter where you look. The level of crime in these cities is something no American should consider acceptable. It should not be considered acceptable.
That is, of course, Donald Trump. He's live in Akron, Ohio, and we're going to keep monitoring the event for any news. And right now, let's listen to what he said about the Clinton Foundation just moments ago.
Hillary Clinton is either too corrupt or too cowardly to meet with the families of those killed by the policies she and Obama support. Hillary Clinton has totally forgotten the first rule of public service. The job of an elected official is to serve the citizens of the United States. That's what the job is. And if you don't understand that, then you are not fit to run for the office of President of the United States. If you're not prepared to put American workers first, then you should not hold or seek public office. We're not working for somebody else. We're not working for another country. It's just that simple. No issue better illustrates how corrupt my opponent is than her pay-for-play scandals as Secretary of State. As the evidence has become public over the last several months, I've become increasingly shocked by the vast scope of Hillary Clinton's criminality. It's criminality. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Our country has gone so far behind. Everybody knows it. Hillary Clinton said she turned over all of her work related emails. She testified to Congress under penalty of perjury. Now we learn about another 15,000 emails she failed to turn over, and they've just been discovered, I guess, today. And don't forget the 33,000 emails she's already deleted. Colin Powell just proved again how dishonest Hillary Clinton is after he busted her for trying to pin the email scandal on him. One more Hillary Clinton lie. Her foundation took in large payments from major corporations and wealthy individuals, foreign and domestic, and all the while she was Secretary of State. The Clinton Foundation accepted as much as $60 million from Middle Eastern countries that oppress women, gays, and people of different faiths. After the FBI or Department of Justice whitewashed Hillary Clinton's email crimes, they certainly cannot be trusted to quickly or impartially investigate Hillary Clinton's new crimes, which happen all the time. Some former prosecutors have even suggested that the coordination between the pay-for-play State Department and the Clinton Foundation constitute a clear example of RICO, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization enterprise. The Justice Department is required to appoint an independent special prosecutor because it has proven itself to be really, sadly, a political arm of the White House. Nobody has ever seen anything like this before. The Department of Justice has acted very unethically, particularly the Attorney General's private, lengthy 39-minute meeting in the back of an airplane before the department's decision not to prosecute her for crimes that would have been prosecuted against any other citizen in our country.
And you just heard Donald Trump in Akron, Ohio, railing against the Clinton Foundation. We are also monitoring his live rally that's going on there right now for any news. Well, and you guessed it, she's not just getting slammed by Donald Trump. Other calls are coming to shut down the Clinton Foundation.
Can you still assure the American people that the Clinton State Department maintained at all points an appropriate distance from the Clinton Foundation?
We have seen no evidence of any behavior, any relations with the Clinton Foundation that weren't completely above board.
It was pay for play.
She is thoroughly corrupt, and so is the Clinton Foundation. They clearly need to change the way they do business. They've indicated they will.
They're never going to stop.
Number one, they should shut it down. Number two, they should give the money back to a lot of countries that we shouldn't be taking and they shouldn't be taking money from.
If I were back in my old job as U.S. Attorney, I would probably indict the Clinton Foundation as a racketeering enterprise.
They'll just start some new process up all over again. That's all these people know how to do, is live off of other people's money.
We showed you Donald Trump's response to this latest news, but here now is Florida Governor and Donald Trump supporter Governor Rick Scott. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta. It's just hard to believe. As you know, I'm the chair of Rebuilding America Now, the Trump Super PAC, and we have an ad up that basically talks about this. She said they walked out of the White House broke. They started a foundation, and today they're worth over $100 million.
You know,
How do you do that?
I looked it up, and I wanted to know whether she's worth $100 million or not. And the range that we got was something like $11 million to $50 million, which is not. I mean, I'm not denying that's a huge sum of money, but everyone keeps saying $11 million. 50 million's a lot. 11 million's a whole lot. But anyway, I know that. I mean, there is. I mean, they gave a lot of speeches, but even that's under fire because there's one speech for $750,000 that Bill Clinton's getting heat for. So I think it would be smart of her to sit down and answer some of these questions, and she will at the debate, I assume.
Well, and on top of that, they've acknowledged now that they're going to stop taking this foreign money. Why did they do it while she was Secretary of State? How, if it's corruption now, why wasn't it corruption before? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, today President Bill Clinton issued something from the foundation outlining the good that the Clinton Foundation has done. Do you think the foundation has done any good in the world?
You know, I personally haven't seen it. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day about Haiti, and they said he would not be welcome to go back there, but who knows? I don't know enough about exactly what the foundation has done. What I do know is they walk out broke, they start a foundation, and they're worth a lot of money. That's not, I mean, they're public servants. That's not how you become wealthy. You don't become wealthy as a public servant. They're trying to get this ad taken down that we have up right now, and we're continuing to raise money to keep this message up there because this is wrong, what they've been doing.
Well, let me bring the viewers in on this now because I'd like to have them vote at home on Twitter. Here's the question to the viewers. Should the Clinton Foundation be shut down? Tweet yes or no using hashtag Greta. We'll show you your live Twitter votes throughout the show. Governor Scott, so what should happen? Do you think it should be shut down? Do you think Bill Clinton should get out of it? I mean, what do you want to do with the Clinton Foundation? An awful lot of money there, and I imagine that a lot of it's pledged all over the world, and I imagine it's enormously complicated.
I think it ought to be shut down. They ought to do what they should have done before. They should give all that money back. They should never have taken money from foreign governments, especially government. I mean, look, they're doing it's governments that don't believe in what America believes in. They're governments that had contracts or doing business with the Secretary of State's office. That is wrong. That should never, ever, ever happen in this country. Here's why I support Donald Trump. He's a business person, never been involved in government before. She's a career politician. He's going to build jobs. She won't. He's going to destroy ISIS. She had her chance.
Well, it was the John Podesta, who's chair of her campaign, issued a statement today, and he was going after him, saying that Donald Trump ought to release his tax returns. Do you agree with that? And among other things, ought to tell more about his debt to big banks. Do you agree with that?
Well, in my race, Greta, I release my tax returns. Every candidate runs a different race. I released my tax returns in both my races in 2010 and 2014. I know Mike Pence has said he's going to release his. Every candidate's different. I've completely disclosed my financial statements.
Is there a justification not to do so? And if he's just being stubborn not to release them, isn't he creating at least for some suspicion in a lot of people?
Sure. You know, look, the Clinton camp is going to try to change the conversation, all right? I mean, you know, look, I put out my tax returns. Donald Trump has to make that decision for himself. But the election is about two people. A career politician who's never created a private sector job, didn't destroy ISIS, has the Clinton Foundation problems versus a newcomer, somebody that's never been in politics before, that clearly believes in building jobs. If you listen to part of his talk he's doing right now, he's going to reduce taxes and reduce regulation, build more jobs. We want more jobs in this country.
And let me jab you a little bit. You just changed the conversation of whether you thought he should. So I'm going to tease you, jab you a little bit on that one. But here are the voting numbers. It's interesting. 88% people think that the foundation should be shut down, and 12% think it should go on, which is fascinating. Governor, thank you for joining us, sir.
Bye, Greta.
The Clinton Foundation is not the only headache for Secretary Hillary Clinton. A federal judge ordering the State Department to release thousands of newly uncovered Clinton documents. Fox News Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen is at the State Department. James.
Greta, good evening. Hillary Clinton has previously testified that all of the work-related emails from her time as Secretary of State, some 55,000 pages of them, were turned over to the Department of State back in November 2014. Now, the department acknowledges that earlier this month it received from the FBI an additional 14,900 documents on 7 CDs that were not part of what Mrs. Clinton made available. State Department officials say they've just begun going through the newly uncovered documents, determining how many of them are emails, which are work-related, which are personal, with the intention of turning over as many as the law will allow to Judicial Watch, the conservative legal watchdog group that sued for access to Clinton's emails and attended a hearing about them in federal district court today. Judicial Watch also released a number of separate email exchanges today involving aides to Secretary Clinton and showing the easy access that big-time donors to the Clinton Foundation have enjoyed to the Secretary's inner office. Now, separately, Fox News obtained call records for Hillary Clinton's chief of staff during her 4 years years as Secretary of State, Cheryl Mills. These show that a senior executive at the Clinton Foundation left almost 150 messages for Cheryl Mills within a 2-year time frame. Those records were released in a court case involving the conservative advocacy group Citizens United. The State Department today said that it always acted under Secretary Clinton's tenure to advance U.S. foreign policy interests and with no other intent beyond that in mind. Greta.
2 quick questions, James. One is, where have these 14,900 documents been that they suddenly surfaced? That's the first question. And the second is, 148 messages were left for Cheryl Mills from the Clinton Global Initiative when she was at the State Department. I assume that doesn't include all the calls where they actually connected. These are just straight up messages. Those are the ones that didn't get through, right?
Right. These are at least 148 messages that were left on these telephone logs for Cheryl Mills. There may have been other messages and other calls. We can't say that anything nefarious was transacted as a result of those messages, but far and away, Laura Graham, the COO of the Clinton Foundation, left many more messages than anyone else reflected in those logs. On the 14,900 documents and where they've been, the FBI Director, James Comey, told us when he announced his decision in the Clinton email scandal that not to pursue an indictment of the former secretary, that they had discovered some work-related emails of Mrs. Clinton's on other people's State Department accounts, and also perhaps, I think, through examination of her server. But again, these are 14,900 documents, not clear by any means that all of them are emails, but we do expect a lot of them will be.
And I'm not confident we got them all if they keep showing up every couple days or a couple weeks. Anyway, thank you, James. And one more time, we're getting a huge response to our Twitter poll, so vote at home on Twitter. Should the Clinton Foundation be shut down? Tweet yes or no using hashtag Greta. We'll show you live Twitter votes throughout the show. Republican National Committee Chair Reince Priebus is here to go on the record. Nice to see you, sir.
Hey, nice being with you, Greta.
I suppose that the Republican Party is loving this, that these 14,900 documents, which may also include emails, has surfaced.
I think it's a tragedy. I mean, I think it's a pathetic example of leadership, and I think that maybe James Comey needs to get back to work and look at these emails and figure out whether he had it right. I mean, you hit a great point before. I mean, 148 messages to Cheryl Mills from the Clinton Foundation.
It's hard to tell if that's, 148, if there are 148 calls, that's a lot. I can't tell if this is just the messages and there were others.
Okay, so you're right, though. I mean, if it's messages, how many actual times did she pick up the phone and cut the deal? And the fact is, you have lawyers for the Clinton Foundation, for Bill Clinton, for Hillary Clinton, communicating to Huma, who is working for both the Clinton Foundation and the State Department. You have our precious national secrets being given away by a person running for president and talking about trust and honesty. It's unbelievable.
The problem, at best, it's arrogance, because the promise is that the Clinton, when she became Secretary of State, is that the Clinton Global Initiative, is called, then would not be part of the State Department, that they would have, he would run that over here and she would do the State Department. And now we find that there's, it's cozy.
Well, it's an addiction to power. It is something that they set up in order to preserve their status in the world with world leaders taking foreign money. It's something that they created to empower and enrich themselves in the eyes of the world and people that would employ them and use their services, whether it be $500,000 speeches in Russia or wherever else that they gave these speeches. I mean, this is something that people should look at and say, this person is not qualified to be president of the United States, because when they were given secrets of our country, they gave it away.
Right,
that alone should disqualify
Just
her.
a side issue. Do you think the Clinton Foundation has done good around the world?
I have no idea.
But I mean,
I would imagine, here's what I think. I think based on what I've seen so far, whatever good they've done around the world is eclipsed by all of the negativity and the corruption and the lying and the stealing and taking from foreign countries. That I'm sure there are good things that they've done. But you have to measure whether that good could have been better done by that money going to the Salvation Army or going to doctors overseas. I mean, because in comparison to what they've done, I don't know.
Trump campaign, Donald Trump is, right now it seems as Secretary Clinton has him on the ropes a little bit. Can he turn it around, especially in light of the fact early voting begins in the all-important state of Ohio October October 12th.
Which is another good reason why the FBI needs to get their work done and not sit on this so that the American people can figure it out. Yes, of course. Look, he had a great week last week. I think another good week this week. I think this thing is back on the rails. And I would tell you, look at the polling today and over the weekend. I mean, we're talking about 3-4 points. It's August. I definitely believe that this can be back and on track, and where you're going to see Donald Trump either tied or ahead after Labor Day.
Well, he seemed presidential in his speech. Then today he was back on Twitter. He was making fun of two hosts on MSNBC, calling him insecure and two clowns. So he's back on Twitter this morning.
Well, look, you know what? Every day is a different day, but I think overall, if you look at the last few days of Donald Trump, you saw him today before your show or in the beginning of your show. He's on message talking about Hillary Clinton, and I thought his speeches last week were fantastic.
But once more he slips.
Well, look, you know what? These are things, it's very tough. It was a first-time campaigner to be in the middle of this media storm, and some of this stuff isn't fair, and some people just don't want to sit back and take it. I mean, he's somebody who just doesn't want to sit back and take a bunch of garbage from the media. And so, you know what? To a lot of people, I think it's refreshing.
Mr. Chairman, nice to see you, sir.
All right, take care.
And Secretary Hillary Clinton is in hot water with former Secretary of State Colin Powell. He says she's trying to pin her email problems on him. He says, not so fast. That's next. Donald Trump supporters spit on. Just check out that video showing protesters yelling, spitting, and throwing things outside a Trump fundraiser in Minnesota. Police were there, but no one was arrested. That was the scene on Friday. And tonight, former Secretary of State Colin Powell hot under the collar because he says Secretary Hillary Clinton is now trying to pin her email scandal on him. Secretary Clinton claimed when she was Secretary of State, former Secretary Powell had advised her to use a personal email account. But Powell's saying that's not true. Former senior advisor to President George W. Bush, Karl Rove, goes on the record. Good evening, sir.
Evening.
Before I ask you about the Colin Powell, Secretary Hillary Clinton issue, you know, it's absolutely appalling. I don't care if it's Secretary Clinton or Donald Trump supporters. The idea that people are spitting on supporters in this country as people are exercising their First Amendment right to go to a fundraiser, or even a First Amendment right to protest, to spit on, do that. You know, it's just appalling, isn't it?
It really is. It's ought to be condemned by both campaigns, particularly the Clinton campaign. I know they didn't instigate it, but they better send a clear signal that this is working against her interests and against the interests of American democracy.
All right, let me talk about former Secretary of State Colin Powell. He sounds a tad bit hot under the collar because he says that Secretary Clinton is trying to pin the email scandal on him. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he's got every right to be angry. First of all, the story that emerged late last week is sort of weird. I mean, she's sitting at a private dinner with the former secretaries of State, Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State under her husband, two Secretaries of State under George W. Bush, and they're at dinner, and she supposedly asks each one of them, what's the most important piece of advice you have? And she claims that Colin Powell said the most important piece of advice I've got you is have your own private email account. That just, I worked with Secretary Powell for 4 years. That doesn't sound like something that he would say if that were the question. And when he says he doesn't remember the conversation, I frankly believe him and I don't believe her. In fact, I would just say that it just would be shocking if that question were asked and answered in that way. And you'll notice there's no other attendee at that dinner who says, oh yeah, when Colin Powell was asked what the most important piece of advice he had to give, it was do your own email server. So that's one point. The second point is, yeah, he did provide her information about what he did with a private email account, but it was months after she began using her own private email server. He had an account on an established web hosting company, AOL.com. He used it for intercommunications inside the State Department, but it wasn't a private homebrew server stuck in his basement. And between the time that he served as Secretary of State and the time that she came in as Secretary of State, the rules were tightened and department officials were told explicitly, do not use private email accounts. Colin Powell's successor, Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, never used email when she was Secretary of State.
You know what bothers me the most about this, and that's that the House had asked for the emails and the lawyers then sorted through them, not even reading them, and then the lawyers decided, knowing that the House wanted them, what was, quote, personal, what was work, and they destroyed the personal without anyone else getting a chance. And, I guess that maybe if I were the lawyer, I would do that aggressively, but it's always sort of stuck with this. If you know that they're subject to a freedom of information request, that they are records that should be maintained, what in the world were they destroying them after they'd been asked for?
Yeah, well, they had no right to do so. You're right, it smells like a cover-up. It looks like a cover-up, and I think it is a cover-up. And we know for fact certain that among the emails that they destroyed were emails that they recovered from other people's email accounts that were clearly official business. They did not disclose the emails from a former Clinton aide who was stuffed over at the Clinton Foundation, sending her private emails, giving her advice about Libya. We know that they considered that, quote, personal, but it was clearly connected with her official responsibilities.
And if we are wrong about it, that we somehow got this all wrong, she should at least speak up and tell us why we are wrong instead of letting this suspicion swirl. But let me move to another topic. A brand new swing state poll in the all-important state of Ohio, and now Secretary of State Clinton is up a few points over Donald Trump. Your thoughts about this new poll?
Well, Monmouth is a pretty good polling organization. It shows that he's behind. He's got to win Ohio. He's got to win Florida. He's got to keep the Mitt Romney states, and he's got to win something else. But it shows he's within striking distance. I think what's interesting is that these battleground state polls, he's not doing as well as you might expect if you looked at the national polls. And I think part of the reason why is because the Clinton campaign has either run or placed $150 million of spot TV in the battleground states, and the super PAC that's associated with her, Priorities USA, has put another nearly $44 million in advertising that it's already run. So nearly $200 million of advertising in the battleground states, and that's been going on since May 16th when the Priorities USA began running its ad. Donald Trump began running ads on Friday. He's put $5 million up. That's a 40-to-1 disadvantage. I think that's why he's not doing better in some of these battleground states than he is.
Carl, thanks. More on the record coming up. Tonight, Donald Trump just wrapped up a speech in the ever-important swing state of Ohio, and a new Ohio poll shows Trump has some work to do there. The Monmouth University poll of likely Ohio voters has Secretary Hillary Clinton with a lead over Donald Trump. Clinton's at 43%, Trump's at 39%. That's a 4-point difference. And I'm sure Donald Trump knows no Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio. The On the Record political panels here, ABC News political director Rick Klein, and from the Boston Globe, Andy Linsky. Rick, the 4 points, it's been at 4 points for about a month now.
Yeah, and of course it's critical to both campaigns, particularly to the Republican campaign. Those numbers are still very low, though. You look at that, that's a large number of undecided voters, potential third-party voters. So it's not like anyone who's busted through a ceiling. But just in terms of the efforts that the campaigns have gone through, despite that event tonight, I'll tell you, my colleague Jonathan Karl was in Akron tonight going to the Trump field office that they had advertised for the general election. Nobody home, nothing going on.
Maybe at the rally, though.
Well,
I assume that they might be at the rally.
There are more people at the subway next door.
I guess it.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things about those numbers is the 10% for Gary Johnson in there. I mean, you take out Gary Johnson and all of a sudden...
Who gets the Gary Johnson?
I mean, I tend to think that Donald Trump would have gotten the Gary Johnson.
But I mean, if he leaves it, that would go to, you think?
That's where I think that vote would go. And I looked back at 1992 Ohio results where 21% went for Ross Perot and handed that state right to a different Clinton.
I just think that the most important thing when you look at these numbers and how important this race is to the Democrats and Republicans and to the nation overall is I think that debate, when those two are going to be standing side by side, that's when those undecided are going to make the decision in Ohio, and that's when the Gary Johnson voters will decide whether they want to go Trump or Clinton.
I think you could seal the deal there, and I think the way the trajectory of the campaign is now, Trump needs a breakthrough moment. This is not headed in a good direction for him. He needs to pull, as Chairman Priebus says, essentially even by Labor Day. If that doesn't happen, he needs the breakthrough moment at the debate. So that's why he's cramming. That's why it's time to study, because you're only about 5 weeks left until the biggest television event maybe of all time.
Yeah, and and Hillary Clinton, I've got to say, she is very good at these debates. I mean, this is where she stands out. She did a great job against Sanders, who obviously was not quite as good of a debater. But you haven't seen Trump do a one-on-one debate before. I mean, he didn't do it towards the end, and it's a whole different animal when your pressure's completely on you versus another person.
And the ground game. I mean, typically the the ground game in something like this would, I mean, especially for Secretary Hillary Clinton, I think she's probably got my guess is that they've got a stronger ground game right now, more organized.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, they've replicated a lot of what Obama did in 08 and in 12, where he was able to win the state, including Ohio, and building on that in ways that Trump, I think, they're lapping the field right now. Trump's got so much catch up to do.
One of my favorite things that everyone says, well, at least the candidates have until November 8th. I got out my chart today, and the early voting. I mean, they really don't have until November 8th. They've got. I mean, Ohio is coming up really soon, and an early part of October. I mean, they've really got to move.
And that's when that ground game comes into play. You get 2 or 3 points on that ground game, and the Clintons, they know how to do that, and they have the money and the organization in place. So,
does the email stuff matter, or is it? I mean, is that taking anything away from Hillary Clinton?
This was a very bad day for Hillary Clinton. You look at the new emails, the relationship between the foundation and the State Department, the idea that there's some 15,000 new documents, including many emails that are out there, revelations of new work-related emails. It's all a massive destruction.
It may be a bad day, but does it have any real impact? Is she going to lose any votes on this?
I think if Trump were able to streamline the messaging and take advantage of it, I think right now this would be a huge day in the Marco Rubio campaign. that is not. Trump is not well equipped to take advantage of stories like this because he ends up stepping all over his own news.
But you still have the merging right now of 2 big Clinton storms, like the email storm and the foundation storm are just right today starting to merge into what could become a superstorm.
Well, every day is new around here. Anyway, Rich, Hanny, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Louisiana is struggling to recover after a week of deadly flooding. We take you to Louisiana next. Plus, it just went from bad to worse. More bad news for Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte. That's coming up. Get ready to speed read the news. Look at this. A child arrested just moments before the child detonated a suicide vest. It happened in Iraq. Local TV showing police detain the child and removing the belt. The boy is believed to be about 12 or 13 years old. No terror group has claimed responsibility, but ISIS says it carried out a nearby suicide attack about an hour before this boy's arrest. And child bombers sadly becoming part of the ISIS playbook. The Turkish president blaming a boy about 12 years old for carrying out yesterday's deadly suicide bombing at a wedding. But today, Turkey's Prime Minister said they still have not determined if the bomber indeed was a child. More than 50 people were killed and dozens more injured in the deadliest attack in Turkey this year. And a remarkable story of survival. A little girl rescued from a capsized boat. 23-month-old Kennedy got stuck when her family's boat crashed and flipped over in Cocoa, Florida. Luckily, she was trapped in an air pocket and was able to breathe for over an hour. Her family calling it a miracle. And that's tonight's Speed Read. This is a Fox News alert. Flood-ravaged Louisiana, 13 dead, more than 60,000 homes severely damaged in the deadly floods. Fox News correspondent Will Carr is live in Sorrento, Louisiana. Will?
Good evening, Greta. President Obama is set to come and see some of this disaster himself. He's going to see homes just like this that took on 3 to 4 feet of water. They've had to rip out the walls, and they've really had to gut the insides of homes like this. For the past 24 hours or so, residents have been taking all of their possessions that were soaked in these floods. They've been piling them up. Walls of debris right here of everything they had. This was a crib here. We've seen so many other personal items. This was actually the biggest disaster that the United States has seen, according to the Red Cross, since Superstorm Sandy back in 2012. 60,000 homes damaged, 110,000 residents have filed to get some type of federal relief moving forward. Just so widespread here. 20 parishes have been declared disaster zones. As I mentioned, President Obama coming, he's going to see these streets where within the past 10 days we saw 30,000 water rescues. Many people not able to get out fast enough to get to safety. When he comes here, he's going to spend about 3 or 4 hours. He comes on the heels of Donald Trump coming last week. Hillary Clinton issuing a statement earlier today saying that she'll come when the time is right. And as the politics plays out with all of this, Greta, I spoke to one homeowner who said that it's really on the ground here about just trying to get to the next day. She said it's just one thing that she tries to take away, whether it's finding a personal item that actually survived these floods, or somebody coming up, a volunteer that they weren't expecting, or something as simple as a hug. Those are the things that help her move forward. Greta.
Will, thank you. And Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte still in hot water. Now he has more bad news. That's next. Lochte is seeing his sponsorships dry up, and today 4 companies severing ties with Lochte. This coming in the wake of Lochte lying about being robbed at gunpoint in Rio. TMZ caught up with Lochte in Los Angeles.
what would be worse in your eyes, you know, if they prosecute you or if the USOC says you can't swim again?
You know, I think if the USOC says I can't swim anymore, I think that would be the most hurtful.
We heard that Speedo, you know, has dropped you, and they released a statement about it. What are you going to be wearing in the pool going forward? Have you thought about it yet? Or is there something that, you know, you love that looks fly?
I heard about that, and, you know, it stinks. Speedo was great to me. They were like a second family throughout my swimming career, and, you know, I guess it's a new chapter now.
Managing editor for USA Today Sports, David Meeks, is here, and he just got back from Rio. David, I may be one of the few in this country, but I think he's been punished enough. But anyway, what a story. They're all dumping him now.
It's quite a saga. You know, we're learning a lot more about it now. I think that these kinds of stories always happen, right? There's an initial report, then there's a rebuttal, and as time goes by, more things start to filter out, and there may be more merit to Ryan Lochte's original tale than people thought.
Well, TMZ, I know last week said there was some of the surveillance tape was not disclosed, that there was 3 minutes. I don't know what that means or what it shows, but why did this capture everyone's attention?
I think it was because there was so much attention on Rio coming in that they weren't going to be successful holding the games, and there was a lot of pressure on them. So when he came in and said, we were robbed, and these were police officers, it embarrassed the city, it embarrassed the police officers, the police force, and I think there was a bigger reaction. They investigated it harder because of that.
Well, he has apologized to Brazil. Does he get any credit for that? I mean, has Brazil accepted that?
Well, I think the next phase of this, Greta, is people looking at was there embellishment from the authorities. They said he trashed a bathroom. We can't find any evidence that it happened. They said he got in a fight with the guards. Can't find any evidence that it happened. A judge said these guys seemed nonchalant when they came back. Witness told us they were terrified.
Well, you know, I know it's going to get the viewers going to get mad at me, but I'm an old defense lawyer. But you know, is that security guards look like police, especially if you're drunk. And if someone pulls a gun, that's that's scary. I'm not in any way defending trashing someplace, assuming that did happen. But it's just like, to me, it's the whole world has jumped on this guy.
You know, the State Department came into USA Today to brief us before we went down there. The number one concern they said, was street crime. Don't worry about terrorism. Don't worry about Zika. It's street crime. I assume everybody got told that. If you're in that cab, you're sitting there, these guys approach the cab, who's to say you wouldn't think you were being robbed?
Speedo got out fast.
Yeah, it happens. I think that's kind of a modern era thing with sports figures. You know, as soon as something embarrassing happens or someone is portrayed as like not being truthful, that comes right behind it. Now, we don't know if they're reacting to the robbery tale or the fact that he was drunk. He's admitted he was drunk that night, and they just didn't like the whole look.
And Ralph Lauren?
Same thing, right?
So is this the end of his endorsements?
You know, we were talking about that around our office, and we were talking about where is Ryan Lochte. He's a very popular figure. He's kind of known as an affable, beloved guy on the team. I heard someone say today he could be the next Bachelor. You know, who knows? People like him. Yeah, he's well liked on the team. That is true. That is true.
How did he manage to get out of Brazil ahead of everybody else? I mean, he had scattered by the time things had really blown up.
I think the answer to that is that the Brazilian authorities gave him no indication there was anything wrong. They did not ask him to stay. They didn't say anything about it. They didn't even really investigate this that seriously until it looked like it was embarrassing to them.
Didn't he want to stay? I mean, I would have stayed for the closing ceremony. If I were good enough to compete in the Olympics, I'd want to stay for the closing ceremony. Why'd he leave?
Well, you sound more like Bubba Watson. Bubba Watson wanted to stick around the whole time. I think some of these guys have been in lots of Olympics. They've seen it all, and they want to leave. I don't think that's all that unusual, really.
And so now it's on to Tokyo?
On to Tokyo, and I think that he said in that tape of TMZ that it would be very hurtful to him if he were suspended by USOC. And I do think as facts unfold and everybody takes steps back and takes a longer look at this, we'll see what he deserves.
All right. Well, I hope you'll come back as things unfold. David, thank you very much, and welcome back to the United States.
Thank you, Greta. Good to be home.
And coming up, I want answers. Who do I want to hear from? Start guessing. My Off the Record next. Breaking 2016 news, Secretary Hillary Clinton just responding to former Secretary of State Colin Powell. Secretary Powell says Secretary Clinton tried to pin her email scandal on him, but he says that's not true. Now the Clinton campaign just responding with this statement. Hillary Clinton has consistently taken responsibility for her decision to use a single email account, as she has said for over a year now. It was a mistake and she regrets it. As I'll go off the record, recently there has been heightened criticism of the Clinton Foundation. Even the liberal editorial page of the Boston Globe is now scandalized. And how about the ultra-liberal Huffington Post? It linked to a story about the Clinton Foundation with the headline, "Just shut it down." But it isn't just the Clinton Foundation, it's the emails. The server in the House and Clinton's personal lawyers sorting their emails and deleting the ones they say are personal before anyone else could check that out. What's with that, right? And today, news that then Clinton Foundation executive Doug Bann, who we all know is attached to President Bill Clinton at the hip, emailed Huma Abedin, who is attached to Secretary Hillary Clinton's hip. Bann emailed that Crown Prince Salman of Bahrain wanted to meet with then Secretary Clinton. Why? Well, the email was in code. I know code when I see it. Bann wrote Abedin that the Crown Prince is a, quote, good friend of ours. Good friend of ours? Why did he say that? Wink, wink. Of course I'm suspicious. Bottom line, time for Secretary Clinton to answer all these questions to the American voter. She talked to the FBI, but not the voters. And P.S. Donald Trump, where are those tax returns, the ones currently not in audit? And that's my off-the-record comment tonight. Live Twitter voting results on your screen right now. Should the Clinton Foundation be shut down? And here are the results. They are, yes, 90% shut it down, 10% no. And don't forget to vote on Twitter every night. That's all for now. We'll see you again tomorrow night right here at 7 p.m. Eastern. Up next, the O'Reilly Factor. Good night from Washington, D.C. Go to my Facebook page and like it. There's a lot going on my Facebook page. And, of course, Greta Wire. See you tomorrow night.